So I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a while and may or may not be true. But it seems like more and more nowadays that it's kind of hard if you're like an independent software developer or are part of some independent team to make any real big innovations or advancements in software. Like if you've ever read the history of different programs that a lot of people use, like text editors, compilers, desktop environments, things like that, or like even like operating system kernels or whatever, right? A lot of them were made usually in like the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and they were usually made by like one guy in his college dorm room or like a couple of friends, right, who started their own small business. And obviously, I wasn't alive back then, so I can't really speak from experience. I'm just speaking from my own observations and what I've read. But it seems like it's less likely for a single person or small group of people nowadays to hold significant impact on software when it comes to innovation or anything like that. And I think this is the case for a couple of reasons. I think most of us it's just naturally how a field develops and matures through time, and some of which is also kind of just a case of corporate greed or a lack of government regulation or too much government regulation depending on how you see it, right? I think because software is more complex than ever and has more moving parts than ever before, it's kind of hard to provide some sort of competitive alternative to some other popular choice of software without also, I guess, conforming to some other technology or building something else on top of some other technology, right? Which in some cases is going to be a good thing if it's something that doesn't need to be reinvented or something that's, just like a standard that everybody should follow, right? But in some cases could also be a bad thing, like if it's built on top of some other technology that's owned by some company or organization that's looking to monopolize the market or looking to just create like weird artificial rules that everybody else using their technology has to follow that hurts the software in the long run, but is done just out of greed or out of, more control over that market, like I said, right? Like, the Brave browser is like something that's gotten pretty popular in the past few years, and it was started by a small group of independent people, right? And, it's great that people have more options when it comes to web browsers, but Brave is also built on top of Chromium, so, you know, and I don't blame them for building it on top of Chromium, because trying to build a competitive web browser nowadays without having some core like engine or something else to, I guess, serve as the foundation for it is really hard. And if you don't do it, you just sort of have to spend the rest of the time playing catch up with your competition, right? But I'll probably say that one aspect that is, I guess, an exception to this rule is probably like game design, since not everybody, like the average person, doesn't just play one game over and over. Oh, I mean, most people don't just like play one game over and over again. Most of the time, they want to play different games at different points and they want to buy new games, right? Nobody wants to do that with other kinds of software usually. So I guess, and also it's become really easy more and more in recent years to like distribute games and things like that, and there's more resources and tools than ever to do it. So I guess that would be the exception. But when it comes to things like compilers or operating systems, there's just really no chance of competition because of how complex that software is, especially nowadays, right? So there's not really huge opportunities for big leaps in innovation when it comes to new software coming out in that regard. It's also becoming a lot harder for people to start their own like software company or tech company and not only be successful but also stay independent. Because any successful tech company nowadays almost always gets bought up by one of the larger like Meta or Alphabet Incorporated or other like Silicon Valley company, right? Which once again isn't really a fault of their own. It's more so just how much they dominate the market. Because even if you do something that's completely different from them or something that they haven't been able to replicate at all in their existence as a company, they could just buy you out and then they'll more than easily integrate your employees and everybody else into some new office that they have, right? So it's kind of hard to actually stay independent when there's very little incentive to do so. And so in turn, a lot of these big tech companies just have more of a monopoly over any given software market, as well as more, I guess, I mean, I don't want to go into like Silicon Valley politics, but I think you get what I'm saying, right? I think the last big frontier that software had where anybody can really make anything, and if it was good, it could blow up and they could get rich off of it and be successful off of it, was probably when the internet was new and when a lot of people were first like really spending time on the internet back in like the 90s and 2000s. Then you had like a lot of independent people, college kids or whatever, making their own like websites or web services that got really popular and people were really invested into it, and they, just because they provided that product that was so good and nobody else was doing that at the time, they just ended up becoming really, really successful, right? And it felt like anybody could really become or like innovate in that regard. But nowadays, even the new like big companies, apart from like modern social media, or any like even outside of social media, it's really hard for an independent website to really be competitive with the pre-established players that have been, I guess, serving that same need for like the past 20 years, right? But even if some new company does come up and become really popular, right, it's usually backed by some multi-million dollar, corporation, or it's sponsored, or it's like usually some other big tech company trying their hand at some different sphere of software, some different service that they can provide, right? And if you look at like the last big trend in software, which I guess would be like the AI stuff, yeah, a lot of people were making cool stuff with AI and like their own cool little AI apps and things like that using ChatGPT or using the image like generators, right? But nobody's really going to be able to compete with actual language models like GPT, right? Like nobody's going to be able to afford the hundreds of millions of dollars of advanced hardware that OpenAI uses to train whatever GPT 4.5 or whatever they're on now, right? And so it feels like it's really only the big companies that have the resources to provide any real innovation or advancement in technology nowadays. And they just sort of leave the crumbs for everybody else to play with and, make apps out of and stuff like that using their technology that they sort of, get a hold of and, they force everybody else to use because nobody can possibly compete with them, right? It sort of feels like as a computer science student or a software developer nowadays that you're sort of a middle child in between two big golden eras of software, right? Or computing or computers in general. Because, you hear about all this cool quantum computer stuff, neuromorphic computing, and all these different crazy things and technologies that you have zero access to and you can't possibly recreate on your own because they're all dominated by like large corporations and academic institutions. So you can't really play with it or do anything with that yet. But all the old stuff that everybody's already made has just been completely dominated by corporations that have been doing the exact same thing for the past 30 years, so there's really no opportunity to compete with them in any meaningful way. But I don't want this video to come off in like any pessimistic way, saying there's no point in making or doing anything, right? Because I think if you still want to make something that's good, whether or not it's completely independent or whether or not it's, has to conform or to some platform or anything like that that you might not want it to be, and you should still just make it anyway and go ahead with it. Or even if you want to make something independent, you can go ahead with it, because I think you and other people will benefit from it regardless, whether or not it becomes actually competitive in whatever market you're looking to get into. And, obviously I don't think that giant tech companies completely dominate everything. Obviously there's a lot of smaller, medium-sized companies that are doing a lot of important things in the world. But I just think that the claims or effects that I've outlined in this video so far have been becoming more and more true as time progresses, right? Since like the late 20th century, right? I mean, a lot of it is just sort of due to just how the market changes over time, right? How the industry changes over time, how technology changes over time. Like that's all like just natural stuff that happens, right? And some of it is just sort of related to things that are completely out of your control. So there's really no use in really stressing yourself out about it or anything like that. The only thing you could really do is just make stuff on your own and try to, make it useful, make it good, make it, improve your skills in any capacity like that, right? And provide something that you think other people think is useful or entertaining or whatever. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say.
It's good. good to be in something from the ground floor. I came too late for that. I know. But lately, I'm getting the feeling that I came in at the end. The best is over.
Many Americans, I think, feel that way.